Hi, it's Mark Fensel. I'm the vet gardener where I teach veterans how to grow, cook, and live with confidence. Today's video is all about knowing when to harvest your garlic. Now, we don't go by what the calendar says, we go by what the plant is telling us. Now, typically, we will harvest here in Central Ohio, USDA 6A, right on the cusp of 6B in late June, early July. But I'm going to show you some signs on the plant that tell you when it's time for it to come up. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into growing garlic, and the number one is your weather. So we had a pretty cool spring here, had some wet periods, and it's blazing hot right now, but that's your number one factor. Number two is when did you plant? So for me, that's late October, early November. And then there's also factors such as your solar exposure. So I have partial late afternoon shade here, but if you have full sun in your garlic, you'll probably be harvesting earlier than I would. And then lastly, your soil type also comes into play. So here's the first sign I look for. The lower leaves start turning brown. And with hardneck garlic, every leaf on the plant is connected to a wrapper layer around the bulb. So when your bottom leaves start dying, that tells you that the whole plant is maturing underground. Now, you don't want to wait until the whole plant is dead and crispy. And if you wait that long, the wrappers around the bulb, they start breaking down and the cloves can split open. Here's an example from last year. You can see what happened there. It'll be edible, it just won't store as well. So a good indicator of when it's time to pull your plant is when you look at these bottom 3 to 4 leaves and they're turning brown and maybe they've curled a little bit, and then you move up the plant and the rest of it's green. That means that it's time to dig one up and see what's going on under the soil. Now, you can use a standard shovel, a pitchfork. I like this tool. It's called a hori knife. It's Japanese for a soil knife. I'll leave a link down in the video notes so you can get your own, but it's a really versatile tool. And what you want to do, loosen the soil around the bulb without digging into the bulb. And you never want to just pull your garlic right out of the ground. You'll pull this stem right out and damage the clove. Now that it's loosened, then you can kind of tug it out like this, rock it back and forth. And there we go. That's a really nice looking bulb. Shake off the loose soil. So keep in mind with garlic, it's not like sweet corn where you have a really short window before those sugars convert to starches. You'll have a good week and a half when you can harvest garlic and it'll still be at its optimum state. But take a look at the bulbs. How they, see how this bulb, it's kind of filling out those shoulders. You want defined, I call them shoulders on the plant. If it's small and shiny and you can't really tell the one clove from another, that means you pulled it a little too young. So you can still use it, but don't pull up any more until they look just like this one right here. So in the northern half of the United States, typically we would grow hardneck garlic, and hardneck garlic will put out what's called a scape. And it's this long stalk, and you can see it's forming a flower pod at the top. Now, about 3 to 4 weeks ago, I saw these scapes emerge, and I came out and I removed almost all of them, save for a few, because it's a small control group, but I wanted to see if it made a difference compared to these two really nice looking heads of garlic that I pulled up. So we're going to dig up a couple here that I left the scapes on, and you might be asking, why is that a big deal to leave the scapes on? And that's because we want the plant to take that energy that it has and put it down into the bulb and not into making a nice looking flower. And there's a lot of things you can use escapes for in the kitchen as well. So let's dig in here and see if there's any discernible difference. Okay, yeah, this first one here, you can see that this plant here was concentrating on growing out the bulb, and this one is growing that tall stalk and trying to turn into a flower. Let's take up one more here. This guy. Yeah, it's another one on the smaller side. On the right side of your screen, you can see a very obvious difference there. And you know, I have probably 4 or 5 others, but I'm guessing that we would see the same with them. Finally, one of the great things about growing garlic is that it's midsummer harvest time. It lets you plant a wide variety of crops in its place after you pull it. My favorite is bush beans, just like these here. And these actually haven't been in the soil very long. This is a top crop variety. And green beans are great to follow up garlic with because they fixate nitrogen back in the soil. Quick to harvest. I think these are about 55 to 60 days. And that'll leave me plenty of time to still do some shorter late fall crops, maybe a kale or spinach after I pull these beans out. That brings us to our next step, curing your garlic. Curing is the 1 to 2 week period where your garlic is equalizing humidity with the environment. It's developing more intense flavor and building up that skin on the cloves that you're probably familiar with when you cook. So you can certainly use your garlic right away, but it'll have a superior flavor and much longer storage life if you cure it properly. Now there's 3 things that you need for a proper curing environment. Number 1 is humidity. You can't let these get wet. Okay, these are out of the ground now. They will rot, they will mildew if they're getting wet. I would advise against the basement for curing. It's fine for storage, but look to garage. I use my garage, these growing racks here, a shed, a pole barn, a covered rack like this would be okay as well. The second thing is proper airflow. I like these racks because these bulbs get air all around. And then third, very important, you want a dark environment. It doesn't need to be like a dark room for developing photos, but you don't want strong sunlight, certainly not in front of a window. That'll make the plant think that it has to start growing again, and you'll start getting a green stem there, and that will shorten the storage life. Now, while hardneck garlic does not have the storage life of softneck varieties, and that's because the softneck garlic varieties, they have more densely packed cloves and also lower humidity compared to hardneck varieties, you can get close to a full year if you store your hardneck garlic properly. I'd say about 10 months or so. So today's July 3rd, and just a couple of months ago, I was still using garlic from last year's harvest in a pasta sauce. Now here's the trick. This is kind of what it looked like when I pulled it out of the ground. We're gonna leave those roots on there when we cure it. We wanna knock that soil off though in case there's any, fungi, critters, microbes in there that we don't want. Okay. We leave the leaves on. We're gonna cure it just like that, and those will dry there. But we wanna shake off that soil and just make it look something like this one right here. And that's all we need to do. Okay, we're gonna set them on our rack. One of the reasons I like a wired rack over a solid shelf is I don't need to turn these or anything. I'm gonna give these 1 to 2 weeks and then put them out in the basement. And some people like to hang them from the ceiling. Well, you can do that as well. Just I wouldn't pack them into a box. Make sure they're one layer deep there, and that'll prevent any moisture issues. So in all your zeal and enthusiasm of harvesting and curing your garlic, don't forget that you need to set some aside for planting later in the fall. And that's one of the best things about growing garlic is that once you buy your seed garlic, you never have to buy it again. Now keep in mind that each of these individual cloves within this bulb, now this is an Italian variety called Music, there's about 6 cloves in here. Each of these individual cloves will grow into a whole new plant. So do your math accordingly and decide how much you want to hold back. Garlic is what we call true to type. So unlike a hybrid tomato, where if you save those seeds, you plant them, they won't turn into exactly the same type of tomato that you had. Garlic will replicate itself, which leads me to my next point. You might be tempted to take your biggest, nicest looking bulbs and put those out on your kitchen counter. By the way, store them out of direct sunlight. But those are the ones that you actually want to save for planting in the fall. The biggest, strongest plants, those parent plants, those are going to pass on their genes to their child plants, and over time you will develop bigger, stronger garlic. So, in closing, as always, take care of your ground. Always help out another vet every chance you get, because if we fail to do that, we've lost sense of the mission. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.